Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from the Federalist dated November 4th. It says, "Idiot media ignore 40 years of history to pretend Trump attacks on cartels are unprecedented." And I always love picking on the media, as you're probably aware if you've listened to this channel for any period of time at all. So let's go ahead and do it again. So scrolling down, it says, "Right or wrong, Trump isn't doing anything new with these choices, which are all well within the range of long-established political norms." Onto the article. It says, "The Trump administration is using lethal strikes against drug cartel boats in the Caribbean, and, as always, journalists are quite confident that nothing like this has ever happened before. He's murdering drug runners, oh no, executing them without due process, and in an unprecedented use of military force. I could show you a dozen recent examples of this argument, but, as always, the dumbest, laziest example could come from just one source. And oh, look, it's the New York Times. And David French, who is basically a traitor to Republicans, says why Trump can do no wrong. It says, "Watch the master at work, typing whole paragraphs despite what appear to be significant cognitive impairments." And they're already ripping on David French, so let's go ahead and see what it says here. It says, "But it's worse than that. The very fact that it's open and obvious is making it impossible, for now at least, to stop. In fact, his corruption only escalates." What they keep saying he's corrupt. What has he done that's corrupt? I'd like you to name something, people on the left. Like what has Trump done that's corrupt? Stop using that, because it's making me think you don't actually know what it means and you're just saying it to say it. Anywho, says, "We are watching Trump execute supposed drug traffickers without due process and amass military assets outside of Venezuela without even the pretense of seeking congressional approval." Oh, you mean like all the time Barack Obama basically did the exact same thing? Okay, and like, they're not supposed drug traffickers. I think we know that they are, and you know what? You're not going to get me to feel any sort of sympathy for the drug dealers that are killing American citizens. Okay, it says, "But who needs Congress or the law for that matter when the president is in command? Even when it comes to matters of war and peace, MAGA defers to the man who tells them exactly what they want to hear. He sounds like he's trying to make MAGA into a cult, and MAGA is not a cult. It's very easy, and maybe one of these days I will tell you why it's very easy to figure out that it isn't. It says, "We are watching Trump execute supposed drug traffickers without due process. This is a stunning new development," and French explains that Trump supporters tolerate it because of their shameful ignorance. Yeah, he's kind of talking down to you. It says, "They are desperate to rationalize, excuse, and justify anything that he does, and they do not know much of anything about the law." And says, "There's the premise. Dumb MAGA trash may not know this, but the law doesn't allow the use of lethal force against drug cartels because drug traffickers must be given due process, and so there's just no reasonable role for the military in counter-narcotics operations if you understand American legal and historical norms. Trump is a bizarre outlier, recklessly doing dangerous things that no one has ever dared to do before." It says, "Now, notice the date on this news story. It looks like 1986. Nothing more specific than that. So it says, so in 1986, the U.S. Army participated in an attack on a drug processing facility in Bolivia with 100 American infantrymen supported by a bunch of American helicopters. It's a screenshot with captions. And by the way, if you can't do the math, 1986 was basically 40 years ago. And this screen capture here says the U.S. troops who flew to Bolivia this week today began raiding cocaine and so on and so forth, I'm sure. And you can find the actual newscast. But yes, so this has been done. So it says, "For literally decades, with considerable controversy and debate, the United States has militarized the drug war in Latin America. Everyone on the planet knows this, and has known it for many years, as one of the most crushingly obvious political realities of this century and the last one. Again, note the date on this news story. It looks like it says July 4th of 2002, 23 years ago. So the U.S. set to resume its role in halting Latin drug planes." I almost said Haiti for something there, but halting Latin drug planes. So it says, "President Bush is expected to approve the resumption of a program to force down or shoot down airplanes suspected of ferrying drugs in Latin America, a year after the program was halted by the mistaken downing of a plane carrying American missionaries in Peru," American officials say. Yeah, and that's obviously an unfortunate thing. So it says, "Here's the introduction of the October through December 2012 issue of Special Warfare Magazine, an official publication of the U.S. Army, from page 4 of this PDF file." Let's read it. It says, "The United States Army Special Operations Forces have a unique and successful 50-year partnership with the forces of Colombia. That partnership is rooted here at the U.S. Army John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School, whose former commander, Major General William P. Yarborough, was key in developing early relationships between the militaries of the two countries. Earlier this year, the Special Warfare Team headed down to Colombia in support of our Special Operations Command South Edition. While there, the team spent time with key leaders in the U.S. military group, Colombia, members of the Advanced Operations Base, military trainers, other government agencies, and Colombian military leaders. So what we found is that the partnership started more than 50 years ago is still strong. U.S. forces are working closely with the Colombian forces, advising them in their ongoing fight against the Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia, that's the FARC group, you can see the anagram there, and yeah, they're communists, and transnational criminal organizations that use the FARC as a means of running narcotics and weapons. Today, U.S. SOF is an integral part of the U.S. country team in Bogota, Colombia. SOF is fully integrated in all U.S. activities within this country, from working with conventional forces to working with interagency partners like the U.S. Agency for International Development, that name may look familiar to some people, and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. It is the unique ability of SOF to work with our partner nation forces and the interagency that has made it so successful in Colombia. We have learned in more than 50 years of partnership with the Colombians is that relationships matter. One of the greatest skills we teach our young officers and non-commissioned officers is how to build relationships with their partnered force. Those relationships are nurtured and strengthened through ongoing episodic training. The bonds are further strengthened as soldiers who have formed partnerships use social media to stay in contact and to strengthen their friendships with their partnered force. Today, Colombian forces are leading the fight, with our civil affairs, psychological operations, and special forces soldiers standing alongside them. This long-term, persistent presence has brought a stabilizing presence to Colombia, which continues to spread in the U.S. Special Forces Command South area of responsibility. So other than infantry assault and shooting down planes and embedding Special Forces soldiers with Latin American militaries in a few hundred armed raids over the course of 5+ decades, it's a shocking break with American political norms to use lethal force against the cartels. No one has ever done it before, except for literally every single other president. Says if this isn't a history you're familiar with, you can read a detailed discussion of American military counter-narcotics operations here, and there's a link right there where I just said here, with extensive legal and political context. If you want an example straight from the source, you can read President Bill Clinton's 1993 Presidential Decision Directive on Counter-Narcotics in the Western Hemisphere, assigning a substantial role in drug interdiction to the military here. There's another link there as well. It says, once again, Donald Trump is doing something that's highly debatable and can be argued about well within the bounds of ordinary political disagreement, but the debate is garbaged up with a bunch of hysterical and willfully obtuse fakery about a supposedly shocking break with American political norms. We never have honest debate because of the growing psychosis of Trump monomania within the preening and empty new elite in media, academia, and politics. Trump is not the first American president to think up the allegedly stunning idea of using lethal force against the supply of illegal drugs from Latin America, and anyone who suggests to you that he is should be regarded as a colossal idiot. Well, I guess that speaks about what he's going to say about David French. So going back to David French and his lazy argument, the same goes for the part about gathering armed force outside Venezuela without congressional approval. Again, a highly debatable choice, but also comparable to the Obama administration's unapproved war in Libya or the Biden administration's attacks on Houthi targets in Yemen. If we reach beyond very recent examples, Thomas Jefferson, that goes back a little bit, sent the U.S. Navy and a bunch of Marines to attack pirates in northern Africa, and did so without a congressional declaration of war. That's the Barbary Wars, I believe. Don't know a lot about that, but probably should know more about early American history, which is not my forte, but I definitely would like to know more. This is right or wrong. Trump isn't doing anything new with these choices, which are all well within the range of long-established political norms. We're addicted to hysteria, and it prevents meaningful debate. Maybe that's the point of it. To see also my recent essay at Tom Klingenstein's website on Trump's supposed politicization of the military. It says, on a related note, take a few minutes to read a federal judge's 1984 ruling in Conyers versus Reagan. It says those names alone should hint at the outline of the dispute. Members of Congress sued the Reagan administration over the president's decision to order the military to invade Grenada, I remember that, without congressional authorization, asking the courts to order the troops to cease fire and get back on the boat. It says, for relief, plaintiffs request that this court invoke its equitable powers and grant plaintiffs a writ of mandamus and or an injunction directing defendants to withdraw the remainder of U.S. Armed Forces personnel from Grenada and also grant plaintiffs a declaratory judgment holding the invasion of Grenada and the continuing occupation by U.S. Armed Forces to be illegal and in violation of the United States Constitution. This insert own Judge Boasberg joke here. If you don't get that reference, I invite you to go look up who Judge Boasberg is. It says, but the judge declined. It says, if the court were to permit plaintiffs to come before it and litigate this matter, after plaintiffs were unsuccessful in their attempts to forward legislation that addressed their concerns, the court would unnecessarily and wisely interfere with the legislative process and raise significant separation of powers concerns. Insert own Judge Boasberg joke here. Oh, sorry, did I already do that one? Yes, you did, and you're not wrong. There's again the claim that Trump is venturing into dangerous new territory by using military force without congressional authorization is too silly to entertain. These are new iterations of old debates, and it's not at all hard to see that Trump isn't acting against our allegedly sacred political norms. His idea about the boundary of his military authority is historically ordinary, contestable, debatable, but unremarkable. So there you go. I didn't actually know about a couple of those things, but yeah, so it's just our media being our media and, like I said, completely ignoring stuff that's happened before to try to own Trump. And then you don't even have to dig like that far beneath the surface. In fact, it's probably like a paper-thin layer beneath the surface. And it's like, oh, wait, this has already been done before by other presidents that the media reveres, like I said, Barack Obama, and even Joe Biden to a degree. So anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.